Trucker Dump, episode 166. In this week's show, we discuss more on the AB5 situation, the under 21 driver program that started recently, the outcome of the Hours of Service Challenge, driver-facing cameras, Connecticut's new emissions law, more women truckers, tips for brake care, trucker pets, more studies on truck parking, electric truck ramifications, and what the heck is the PHMSA? All those stories and more, plus, of course, we're going to hear from you in the listener feedback segment. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Porter Freight Funding. You can learn more at porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump. Or you can call 205-397-0934. Hit it!
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources that help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Howdy folks, I gotta tell you, I am really confused what's going on right now. I'm sitting in a hotel and I think this desk was made for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or something because it's so high up in the air that when I put my microphone on the table, I darn near shoved it right up through my nostril into my brain. Well, since I'm not 7'2", I just opened up the drawer and dropped the microphone down in there and, well, all seems to be working so far. Ah, the podcasting behind the scenes that I know you all crave. Not. So those new to the show might be asking, who is this weirdo talking about shoving stuff up his nose? My name is Todd McCann. I'll be your host. I am a 25-year trucker. I am the author of 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is Trucking Life. And it's got a really long subtitle, which I have no idea why I did that, but it's really long. Also really long is the 9.25-hour audiobook that comes with Trucking Life. That comes for free when you buy the ebook. You can get those ebooks anywhere you buy your books, or you can just go to abouttruckdriving.com to check out the ebook combo pack, which is 25% off. That makes it only $14.98. Enough about that. Hey, I had a unique experience just earlier this week. You know all that record rainfall that fell in St. Louis? Lots of flooding. They had over 9 inches. Some report over a foot, in less than 24 hours. And that broke a record that took place like in 1915. That record was like 7 inches, something like that. So, man, it was flat coming down. Well, guess who was in it? This guy. Yep. And even worse, I was taking an empty from Joplin, which is where I'm based out of, to Evansville, Indiana. So I was driving through there with an empty trailer. Of course I'm empty. Why wouldn't I be empty when it's pouring like that? I mean, it was coming down in buckets, got to tell you. But, honestly, after I got through that night and I heard about how much rainfall there was, I was a little surprised because I have driven in harder rainfall than that. But I guess just the fact that it was just going for so long, so hard, so steady that it ended up just flooding St. Louis. What a mess. But I made it through and made it with pretty good time, honestly. Didn't slip and slide around a whole lot, just a little bit. So I guess that's something, not sliding into a ditch and dying, or worse, into the muddy Mississippi. But I digress. I hope your week is going fabulous. I use the word fabulous an awful lot for a guy who's straight. Kind of weird. So anyway, what say I just quit rambling and we just move on to the news. Okay, in the last episode, we were talking about the AB5 goings-on at the Oakland port and how they had been on protest, blocking gates and everything and not allowing the port to function at all for 3 days. And we were wondering how long this was going to go on. Originally, it was planned for 3 days, but they weren't even sure it was going to last that long. Well, the verdict is out. Apparently, this lasted all week. Yep, they had the whole port shut down for 1 whole week, but now it is dispersing. Truckers are trying to get back to their jobs and just continue on, and we're going to cover how they're doing that here in just a little bit. But basically, they got no satisfaction from this. Governor Gavin Newsom is still insisting that he is going to make this AB5 rule, go into effect as soon as he can get it done. And, he's just not going to give in on that. Even though, like we said in the last episode, he has given in for lawyers, accountants, and real estate agents, which is an odd choice. But hey, I guess they got more money than truckers do. Anyway, if you're interested in all this AB5 stuff, if you don't know what it's all about, just go back a couple episodes. I believe we started talking about it in episode 162, maybe? Something like that. Oh, I've actually been talking about this forever, but for the latest thing with all the shutdowns and everything. But referring to shutting down the ports, that is a fairly recent thing. But on the same subject, let's jump over to freightwaves.com. And this is one of those ways we talked about getting around the AB5 rule and, how to become an independent contractor or stay an independent contractor without actually being an independent contractor. Well, there's a company called Transforce, and they are offering what they call a 2-check solution to help independents comply with AB5. So here is the skinny of all of this. Basically, this company called Transforce Group, they've been providing drivers to trucking companies for a long time. So, they're responsible for recruiting them, hiring them, paying them, all that stuff. And they're saying their solution works around this AB5 rule. So the way this would work is an independent contractor would go and sign up with Transforce Group as an employee of Transforce Group. Boy, that's hard to say. And so they would be paying their check, which means they're going to get a W-2, which is what the California government is after. So that qualifies that. But how do they stay independent? Well, there's the twist. I thought when they were talking about 2-check system, I thought they were meaning like 2 check off, check the box, but they weren't. They're talking about actual paychecks. So anyway, the first check in that 2-check system is, again, Transforce is going to pay the driver as an employee. The second check is paid by the carrier to that driver for leasing the driver-owned truck. So it's a little workaround, but they seem to say that it works. Now, the only catch to this is you cannot be a lease to purchase. So if the carrier is offering the truck to a driver to lease, and then they buy it over time, or they just continue to lease it, and then when they're done with that lease, they'll cash in and just get another lease from the same company, that is not allowed because that is the carrier's equipment that they're leasing to you. So it sounds like, according to what this is saying, you would actually have to own your own equipment or lease your own equipment separate from the carrier that you work for. Now, if that didn't make sense, which is totally plausible, knowing this is me reading this article, head on over to freightwaves.com and check it out. It's a very detailed article, but I think it tells you everything you need to know. Again, I say just move the heck out of California and move on with your life. But, I would like to point out why I talk about this AB5 rule so often, even though it's only taking place in California. Right now, it's only taking place in California, and that's why I talk about it, because California, whether we like it or not, is a leader in this kind of stuff. Once they do something, for some strange reason, like a bunch of dodo birds running off a cliff. Is it dodo birds or is it lemmings? I think it's lemmings. Dodo birds, where'd I get that? Anyway, like a bunch of morons, we often follow big dummies right into big trouble. And I'm just afraid that's going to happen with other states, because they're going to see the growth opportunity for these payroll taxes that these independent contractors are now dodging. So if they can make actual employees out of them, they'll get them payroll taxes and all that stuff. And states like money, to do stuff with. So anyway, like I said, freightwaves.com if you're in this boat. I'm sorry for you. All right, hopefully this will be the last thing related to AB5 today. I found this one on overdriveonline.com. ATBS releases quick guide to AB5 ebook. Yeah, we've been talking about this AB5 rule a lot. I've briefly explained it, but they are offering this really short ebook that just tells you exactly what you need to know, including some of your options. Well, it explains the rule itself and the options, and just it's a neat little source. It's free, so go check it out. By the way, ATBS is like a tax and business solution for truck drivers. You know, they help with your taxes and they do consulting, they do accounting, stuff like that. So, you just head on over here to overdriveonline.com and check out the link to that. I've downloaded this to my computer just so I have it nice and handy in case anybody ever asks me a question about AB5 that I can't answer, which is likely. Anyway, check out the link in the show notes. Okay, the ATRI, or the American Transport Research Institute, needs your input as a driver. Found this one on overdriveonline.com. They have launched a short survey to better understand truck driver perspectives and issues with driver-facing cameras. As expected, their research in the past has shown that most drivers are pretty okay with road-facing cameras, but most drivers also hate driver-facing cameras. So they're just kind of wanting to get input on what drivers do and don't like about both of these systems to see how they're going to move forward on this. Now, when they said it's a short survey, it is. I went and took it. It took about 5 minutes. Please be honest with your answers here. There were some answers in here that I really wanted to give because that's what I want the result to be, but I was honest with my answers because what's the point of a survey if you don't give honest answers? But there are plenty of opportunities in the survey to tell them what you want to hear and not what actually you believe. Or maybe you're in denial. But either way, have a look at this. I will put a link to this article and also directly to the survey itself. Have at it. Again, I found that one on overdriveonline.com. You know, from what some of you have told me, I can tell not everyone is a fan of this new news format. Everybody seems to like the weekly stuff, but, you know, a lot of people started listening to the Trucker Dump podcast because of the funny stories, and, you know, I would share my experiences and I had opinions on different things. Well, I still have opinions, but it's just now in news. But anyway, I understand the news is not everyone's cup of tea. And I also understand that maybe some of you really, really miss that old funny writing. Well, I'm here to help you. Not by writing an article, because that's too hard. I've run out of things to say. But I am going to point you to another funny writer. His name is John Bendel, or something like that. And I found this article on landline.media. So this article is called Meet Dryface, the driver-facing camera. Now, this is a satirical article. It's meant to be funny. It's meant to be slapstick. But this is coming from the point of view of what would happen if your driver-facing camera could talk to you, both good and bad. And I got to tell you, I was cracking up through this whole thing. This article is funnier than anything I have ever written by far. I highly recommend you go check it out. There'll be a link in the show notes. Just head on over there, have a read, and I really hope you enjoyed this article as much as I did. Bravo, Mr. Bendel. Good stuff. Again, you can find that on landline.media or just go to the show notes. Okay, this next one is possibly the mega article of this episode. I'm not going to talk about it that much, honestly, because, hey, if you're interested in it, you're interested in it. If you're not, you're not. This one is entitled, Will Battery Electric Trucks End Up a Black Eye on Environmental Benefits? So here is the gist of this long article. Again, it is long, but there's some graphs. There's lots of good information in here. But basically, the gist of it is, are battery electric vehicles as eco-friendly as we think they are? Well, you know, once they're on the road, sure, less emissions for sure with a battery electric vehicle. But what about everything that goes into making a battery electric vehicle. And actually, it is quite shocking. According to these graphs from the ATRI, which again is the American Transport Research Institute, they say that electric vehicles produce the most CO2 emissions by far when it comes to the overall production of the vehicles and the batteries and all that stuff. And actually, believe it or not, the internal combustion engine produces the least amount of CO2. But of course, that changes the whole picture, once they get on the road, and eventually, the electric vehicles are actually producing less, so it kind of evens out in the end. Now, here's something I hadn't actually considered, but they said probably the most beneficial to the environment in general would be a traditional diesel running renewable diesel. So, made from renewable sources. But unfortunately, that isn't happening right now. Now, that is one of the most efficient, but of course they say the fuel cell electric truck, not the battery power, but the fuel cell electric trucks, if they were powered by solar rather than batteries, solar and wind actually, they would be more efficient. Yeah, but what are the chances of that? I worked for a company one time who was doing some experiments with these little solar panels on top of the trucks, and basically all it was able to do was just provide basically a trickle charge to the battery, so it would run just a little bit longer. The APU would run just a little bit longer overnight, when the sun went down. So, this is a pipe dream to hope you're going to eventually power an electric vehicle, especially a truck with the battery that size, with solar. It just ain't happening. But anyway, like I said, I am really not going to go into this article a lot, but, this article does finish up by saying actually the cleanest truck would be the hydrogen fuel cell. They say that's even better than battery electric trucks. But then again, I read another article a long time ago that says hydrogen fuel cells aren't quite as efficient as they are made out to be either. So, but hey, I guess we'll figure it out in the end when they finally settle on what they're going to do. And we know basically the way that's going to be decided is what makes everyone the most money. Hopefully that means the trucker, along with the engine manufacturer, the government, all the energy companies, all of that. Anyway, like I said, long article, very interesting stuff, things I had never heard before. So, electric vehicles, not all they're cracked up to be. Check it out. Link in the show notes, overdriveonline.com. All right, this is a short one, but it's really great news, so I had to report on it. Overdriveonline.com. This is concerning WIT, which is Women in Trucking. We mentioned them, sometime last podcast. Maybe it was this podcast. I don't know. Everything's all out of order and jumbled nowadays. But anyway, the Women in Trucking organization has a index that they keep track of women drivers and, women in the industry in general. And here's the good news. Back in 2019, women made up just a little over 10% of over-the-road truck drivers, which was an increase of 30% over the 7.89% in 2018. But the good news is that number from 2019 to 2022 has jumped up to 13.7%. That's 3% more since 2019. Apparently, there's kids running around this hotel. Fabulous. Also, the WIT index found that of women in trucking, 33.8% of them were C-suite executives, 39.6% were company leaders, 31% were on the board of directors, 74.9% were HR or talent management, 3.7% were technical roles, 44.7% were dispatchers, and 40% had safety roles. So, boy, that is a lot better than I thought it was going to be, at least in the office part of it, especially in the C-suite executives. Man, almost 34%, and company leaders, 40% almost. Man, that's great. It needs to be guided by a diverse group of people, and if they want to bring in a diverse group of drivers into the industry. Perfect. So anyway, congratulations to women in trucking. And, they're the ones who've really been spearheading this whole women in trucking thing. So congratulations to them. And I would put a link to Women in Trucking website, but it's Women in Trucking. Just search for it. You'll find it. Okay? That's me being really lazy. You can find this article on overdriveonline.com. Okay, do you remember the FMCSA's Under 21 Driver Pilot Program? Well, it's open. And this article on overdriveonline.com says how it works. So again, this is the program that was implemented recently. It's been talked about for quite a while, but it was part of the infrastructure law that went into place recently. And this is called the Safe Driver Apprenticeship Pilot Program. This is going to be going on from this year to 2025, I believe. So here's the way this is basically going to work. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. You can check out the link in the show notes for that. But, it just kind of want to give you a general idea how this is going to work. But I don't think it will affect most of you because you are not a carrier. And, maybe it will if you are, looking to get into this apprenticeship program. You're under 21. So maybe you want a heads up on this, and I would recommend just going to the link in the show notes and going directly here and reading, because I'm probably not going to give you enough information if you're trying to get involved in this as an apprentice. The only other concern would be if you were somebody wanting to train for this, be an actual trainer. There's some details here for that. So anyway, I guess I ought to just quit going into detail about why I'm not going to go into detail and just get on with it. So they say the first step is just to apply with the FMCSA. And there's a link to do so right here in this article. So this is for carriers, of course. Basically, they're just asking you to input your US DOT number, get some basic information about the business, your carrier name, contact information. They want to know about the fleet size, the class of CDL uses, driver turnover rate, proof of insurance, states of operation, just some very basic general information because they are being selective with this group. But I do want to point out that they also stress that they want to be diverse in this and not just, like ethnicity or anything like that. We're talking about different sizes of carriers. They want large, they want small, they want different types, tanker to dry van to not specialty because a lot of that stuff's oversized, but you get the gist of it. So don't think you're out of the running just, because you're a small carrier. Okay. So back to it. Apparently, they are only going to allow a maximum of 1,000 carriers to participate in this and a maximum of 3,000 apprentice drivers. And again, that's through July 2025. So they will be very selective about this. Now, if you're a crappy carrier who has a bad safety record, crashes, or lots of out of service, stuff like that, don't even bother. The FMCSA is going to be looking at all of that stuff and you just will not be selected. Now, the apprentices themselves will have to have a clean record, meaning like within 2 years before they apply to the program, they can't be convicted of an BAC. What do they call it? DUI, different each state, I guess. They won't, if they've ever had their license revoked in the last 2 years, things like that, fatalities, accidents. And they look at, just basically like they would any driver, they look at your driving record, see if you've got speeding incidents or whatever. Now, for the trainers, they are requiring the trainer to be 26 years of age at least. They must have a CDL for at least 2 years before they decide to become a trainer here. And during that 2 year period, they must have no DOT reportable preventable accidents or pointed moving violations. So that's very important. And they must have a minimum of 5 years of experience driving a commercial motor vehicle in interstate commerce. So nothing within the state, has to be interstate. Now, here's something new that I don't think people are expecting. I had not heard anything about this, but the FMCSA is putting safety standards on the trucks themselves, which, that was interesting to me. I think this is going to surprise a lot of carriers who thought they were going to be involved in this. For instance, one is the trucks have to have an automated manual or an automatic transmission. So we're not going to teach these new drivers how to drive a stick. That's interesting. Okay. The second one is it has to have an active braking collision mitigation system, automatic braking, basically. They need a forward-facing video capture system and a driver-facing camera. That's going to be the sticker right there, because lots of trucks nowadays have forward-facing cameras, but most of them don't have driver-facing cameras at this point. So that is either going to, well, just leave a lot of carriers out, or it's going to motivate a lot of carriers to activate that driver-facing camera if it has it and it's been disabled, or just get new devices that have driver-facing cameras. And, well, that's not popular with drivers, so we'll see how that works. And the last is they have to have a governed speed of 65 miles per hour or less, and that's whether you're on the pedal or under adaptive cruise control. Of course, if the FMCSA gets their way with these speed limiters, that won't be an issue at all, will it? Very interesting. We'll see how that goes, I guess. Okay, now they go into some details about how to train an under 21 driver, and I don't really understand what's going on here. They say there's 2 probationary periods. The first is 120 hours. They call it a probationary period. It says you have to have 120 hours of on-duty time, at least 80 hours of drive time, being supervised by an experienced trainer in the sitting over there in the passenger seat. And during this first period, they have to show that they are competent in the following areas: interstate, city traffic, rural 2-lane, and evening driving, safety awareness, speed and space management, lane control, mirror scanning, right and left turns, and logging and complying with rules related to hours of service. In the second probationary period, it's 280 hours, and that's with at least 160 hours of driving time, with that trainer sitting over there in the passenger seat. And now they're going to be focusing on backing and maneuvering in close quarters, pre-trip inspections, fueling procedures, weighing loads, weight distribution and sliding tandems, coupling and uncoupling procedures, and trip planning, truck routes, map reading, navigation, and permits. So all of that, I just don't understand. Why do we have 2 separate probationary periods for that? Why don't they just make it one 400-hour probationary period? I don't understand that. If anybody gets why that would be, let me know. truckerdump@gmail.com. Oh, also it says the apprentice driver can only train in a truck with no doubles or triples, and they can't transport passengers, hazardous materials, or loads over 80,000 pounds, nor can they gain endorsements for such things until after this probationary periods. Both probationary periods are over. Oh, actually, I lied. Further down here, it says if you're an apprentice, once you complete the probationary periods, apparently you can't just go get those endorsements we were talking about, the hazmat and overweight endorsements. They have to wait until they are 21 years old. So that's interesting. They got to become full interstate authorized CDL holders. So that's really about the basics of it. Again, if you are going to be a part of this program or have more interest in it, just head on over here to overdriveonline.com. This is a really detailed article. Actually, all of the websites, CDL Life, Transport Topics, the Truckers Report, everybody was reporting on this, but this article here on Overdrive Online seems to be the most informative and laid out nicely. So go check this out if you're interested. If not, you probably just skipped all this and you haven't heard a word I said anyway. So on with the next story. Okay. Hopefully here is a story we can finally put to rest after talking about it for quite a bit. Found this one on freightwaves.com. This one is called DC Appeals Court Denies Driver Hours of Service Challenge. Okay. If you remember correctly, this is the one where lots of safety groups, including advocates for highway and auto safety advocates, Parents Against Tired Truckers, Citizens for Reliable and Safe Highways, and the Teamsters, which, full disclosure, I am a part of now, they were complaining about some of the hours of service changes that took place back in 2020, and they're saying that it caused additional safety issues and driver health effects. And they were trying to get two of the rules specifically rescinded. The first was the short haul exemption, which stated that if you're a local driver, you could drive up to 14 hours instead of 12. And also you could go up to 150 air miles from your workplace. And in the past, it had been 100 air miles. The other one they were specifically targeting was the 30-minute rest break rule. Now, in the past, that 30-minute rest break had to take place off duty or sleeper berth. But with the new rule, you could use on-duty, not driving status to fulfill that 30-minute break. So apparently there was a 3-judge panel that sat in on this, and they said that while the FMCSA's evidence was less than great, basically, they were saying they did prove it well enough that these rule changes would not have a significant difference in safety, loss of safety. So in the end, these safety advocates and the Teamsters lost out. And I got to say, I'm glad. I am a Teamster, like I said. Most of the Teamsters I know actually enjoy this 30-minute break, being on an on-duty status, because as I've said many times on this podcast, I usually call it the stupid 30-minute break because it's stupid. I don't like it. It just extends my day, which actually the safety groups were arguing, saying that 30-minute rule extends a driver's work day if he's doing it on duty. Well, guess what? It extends the work day if he's taking it off duty too. And most drivers are not going to take a 30-minute nap. They're going to sit there and stare out the window or play on Twitter or Facebook or whatever they're doing for 30 minutes. They're not resting. They're getting away from the driver's seat, sure. But that's exactly what on duty does also. It takes your eyes off the road so you're not quite, your eyes aren't so fatigued, and, your focus is regained by the time you get back in. At least that's my experience. Every time I took a 30-minute break, a mandatory one where I just had to sit there and do nothing, which honestly still exists sometimes, when you're driving for, 10 hours straight and you don't have any fueling or anything in between there. Sometimes you just have to stop at that 8-hour mark and take a 30-minute break and sit there. And every single time I am more tired when I take off again. And that's the experience of most drivers I talk to, including Teamsters. Teamsters didn't like that, of course, though. And the other thing, like I said, they did not like was extending the hours of service, from 12 to 14 for the short haul exception. And again, Teamsters in particular were saying on this one that it just extends the workday too long and it just wears out drivers. I have to say this, and I may get kneecapped for saying this, but, again, I'm a Teamster. I know the way they work, and what they're looking for basically is a way to add more Teamsters, more members, more workers. And, hey, I'm all for more workers, right? Give somebody a good paying job. Where they treat you decent, all that good stuff. But sometimes the Teamsters, well, I don't know, under this circumstance, maybe the city drivers that are working these local jobs don't actually want to work 12 hours or 14 hours. I am not a city driver, so I could not tell you. But the fact of the matter is, what the Teamsters are thinking is if a driver can only work 12 hours and they need that driver to work 14 hours every single day, that's 10 extra hours in a week. For some driver, they might as well just hire another driver. That's their thought behind this. So anyway, if you want all the details on this, just head over to this article at freightwaves.com. But basically, all you need to know is that the hours of service that went into effect in 2020 are still intact. Now, I'm going to run through all 4 of those one more time, just in case you are way behind the times. We've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast, but hey, one last time can't hurt. Okay, the first one is the one we just talked about, the short haul exception, available to certain commercial drivers by lengthening their maximum on-duty period from 12 to 14 hours and extending the distance limit within which they may operate from 100 air miles to 150 air miles. Second one is increased flexibility for the 30-minute break rule by requiring a break after 8 hours of consecutive driving and allowing the recess to be satisfied by a driver using on-duty, not driving status rather than off-duty status. Okay, we just talked about those two. And the other two that were not mentioned specifically, but I don't think either of these safety groups or the Teamsters like these either, but, hey, they're still in effect anyway. The last two are, they modified the sleeper berth exception to allow drivers to split their required 10 hours off duty into 2 periods, an 8 and a 2 split, or a 7 and a 3 split. Neither period counts against their 14-hour window. And I would also point out that the 2 hours or the 3 hours, or even if it's a 4 or a 5-hour split, that off-duty time can go towards extending your 14-hour day if you want to. And the important thing is here is if you want to. You should not be forced to do this. Although I know some logs just automatically do it. You should be able to argue against that. Other logs actually ask you about this, whether you want to use this towards extending a 14-hour day or not. I think that's the way to do it, but you can't really control how your logs work at your company. And the last one here is they modified the adverse driving conditions exception by extending by 2 hours the maximum window during which driving is permitted. So this is the one that just says if you run into adverse driving conditions such as weather, sleet, snow, ice, fog, hail, wind, whatever it may be, floods in the case of St. Louis this week maybe, and oftentimes there is another checkbox there that just says other. So you can use this for traffic jams or something like that. Anyway, the key to the adverse driving conditions is important to note that it is something that has to be unexpected. So, for instance, you cannot take off in a snowstorm and then claim adverse driving conditions later on saying, I didn't know there was a snowstorm. Well, your logs show you took off in it, so you knew it was there. Likewise, you can't run out of time in Atlanta at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and claim you had no idea there would be rush hour traffic. Get the gist here? Now, one more thing I'd like to point out is that I thought, hey, a breakdown is unexpected, right? Well, I found specifically in the FMCSA rules, boy, I had to dig deep for this one, but I got an interpretation that said the adverse driving condition is not allowed for breakdown. I don't know why that is because a breakdown is an unexpected event, but I don't really know. I guess maybe because you can log that as off duty that you could use the split sleeper berth thing. I don't really know the reasoning behind that, but just so you know, technically you cannot use the adverse driving condition for a breakdown. But I am not a lawyer, so I'm just going to say, if you're going to try this, you do it at your own risk. Just hope you get one of those cops who doesn't know the rules as well as you do. Again, you'll find all the details on this article at freightwaves.com. Okay, so unless you are a first-time listener, you undoubtedly know what the FMCSA stands for, right? Well, just in case you don't, that's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and that is the group that is in charge of putting regulations on the trucking industry. But here's something you may not know. Have you ever heard of the PHMSA? No? Well, think of them as a sister to the FMCSA. PHMSA stands for Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. So what's relevant about them today? Well, ttnews.com is going to inform us. That's transport topics. Now, if you don't haul a lot of hazmat or rarely haul any hazmat, right now the regulations are that you have to carry paper copies of the full description of that hazmat. So even if everything you have, all of the bill of lading and everything is a digital on a tablet or something like that, and you just get the customer to sign the tablet itself, that's all fine and dandy. But if you were carrying any hazmat whatsoever, and I mean just 1 pound or even less, any hazmat whatsoever, you have to have a paper copy with the full legal description on there. But the PHMSA is wondering, is that necessary? I mean, this is a digital world we live in. Now, the PHMSA is a division of the U.S. Department of Transportation, so that means they don't just deal with the trucking industry. They also deal with rail, vessel, and air modes, and they say they're already using electronic systems in all of those industries, just not the trucking industry for whatever reason. Who knows? Probably because the trucking industry lags behind in so many things. So, as usual, the PHMSA is going to ask for comments. Now, it doesn't look like they're looking for comments from the average trucker, but, they're looking for information from hazardous material shippers, carriers, logistics facilitators, those kind of people, all about, would you consider implementing electronic versions of this? What problems would that cause? What could you foresee that being the problem? How hard would it be to implement? All this stuff like that. And, again, this isn't really relative to you necessarily unless you own your own company or, you own a hazmat business, which I doubt anybody listening to the show does. But, as a trucker, I just thought you might be want a heads up that eventually this rule may change and you might not even have to have that paper copy with you. So heads up on that one. But I guess it wouldn't even be a change to you at all if you didn't even know that rule existed. So, hey, hope you learned something with that. And take that seriously, by the way, because hazmat is taken very, very seriously and can be a big black mark on your CSA score. So, again, if you are hauling any hazmat whatsoever and the shipper does not provide you with a actual paper copy with the full description and a 1-800 number for an emergency, that has to be on there too. Don't take it until they give you that stuff. Pretty much everybody who ships hazmat knows they have to provide that stuff, but don't let them overlook it, okay? For more details on this article, head on over to Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com. If there's anything I've learned from doing this podcast for 10 years, yes, 10 years, it's that your time is important. And one of the best ways you can save time is by hiring someone to do something that you don't like to do. That's where Porter Freight Funding comes in. And the problem they solve is bad customers who don't want to pay. The last thing you need as a trucker is to do a job and not get paid for it. Well, you don't need that. You need the cash now. And you do that by calling Porter Freight Funding at 205-397-0934 and setting up an account. Once that's done, each time you have one of these problem child customers, you just drop off your load, submit your paperwork to Porter Freight Funding, and get paid within 24 hours. Easy peasy. Sure, you can always set up an ongoing account with Porter to just handle everything for you, or you can just use them for those pain in the butts that you just hate dealing with. Either way, Porter Freight Funding has got your back with not only collections, but also brokering, dispatching, fuel cards, insurance, and any questions you have about compliance. Give them a call at 205-397-0934 or go to porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump. Truckerdump is all one word. And of course, there's a link in the show notes. And thanks to Porter Freight Funding for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. Hey, you know how we're always talking about truck parking and how it really sucks trying to find a spot? Well, here's your chance to help out. I found this one on Transport Topics, ttnews.com. Researchers to study truck parking in Iowa and Wisconsin. Okay, here's the deal. On Interstate 80 in Iowa and along 39, 90, and 94 in Wisconsin, the FMCSA is partnering with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute and the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the Park Unload app. So that is the important part here, the Park Unload app. That's all one word, Park Unload. So here's the way this works. Apparently, there's going to be rest areas along these routes that are marked green. The color green, obviously, well, I guess they're going to paint the spots. And once the app detects that you're close to the spot, You can park in it and you can check in to say, hey, I'm in this spot. And then the app will, whatever you enter will report back to the app, and that will tell the next driver down the road how many spots there are still available in that area. So in that respect, it's kind of like truck driver power or trucker path, and how this is totally reliant on driver input. So they need a lot of people to download the Park Unload app and participate in this. So really, that's all there is to that. Just 3 steps. Download the Park Unload app. When you find one of these spaces, just park in it and check into the parking space in the app. And then when leaving, check out of the app so they know you've left that spot and it's available for the next person. So this all sounds pretty cool, as long as it works. My one big concern is that I hope to heck in that app there is a spot to say the green spot was taken by a driver who doesn't have the app. Because, the way this works out here, right? There's a minimum number of trucks parking spaces, and you'll see drivers parking in handicap zones, along curbs, wherever they can find a spot. And if there's a spot that has green paint on it, they're going to go, don't know what that is, don't care, I need a spot. That's my spot for the night. So that's going to be interesting to see how they keep people out of those spots to make this app work. It would be an ideal world if they could make it work. That way everybody would just kind of know where all the parking spots were. But anyway, that's just an interesting take on this, because apps like Trucker Path and Truck Driver Power and some of the other ones, they just rely on saying there are spots here at this truck stop. It's like, yes, there are a lot of spots, or there's a few, or there's none. And it's just kind of general, but this is going to narrow it down to the actual parking spot. I don't know. We'll see how this works. Anyway, if you're interested in participating in this pilot program to help make this work, just again, head on over to this article on ttnews.com, or just download the Park Unload app and follow the directions right there in the app. And hey, do me a favor. I'm a nerd, and I would normally take part in something like this, but I drive overnight. I never look for truck parking in rest areas, so it is going to be pointless for me to do this. So why don't you take my place, sign up for this, and do it for me, okay? The nerd in me thanks you. Well, hot diggity dang. Thanks to CDL Life here, we can all drink. If you don't get that joke, check out episode 164. Okay, a new Love's is opening in Pennsylvania. There's 130 truck parking spaces, which is a lot for a Love's. There's a Wendy's, 9 diesel bays, 7 showers. There's a Speedco, laundry facilities, cat scale, and a dog park. This is located in Brookville, Pennsylvania. That's I-80 exit 81. So yeah, another Love's opens. But wait, before you put down that shot glass, take another slug, because there's another new Love's opening in Connecticut this time. And this will be Connecticut's first. This one will be located on I-84, exit 71 in Wilmington, Connecticut. Got a Godfather's Pizza, which is awesome. Subway, 56 truck parking spaces. That's pretty big for Connecticut, actually. 7 diesel bays, 3 showers, cat scale, and a dog park. 3 showers, really? For 56 parking spaces. Interesting. Okay, well, anyway, just so you know, now you can put down the shot glass. Actually, I hope that shot was full of like Kool-Aid or something, not tequila, okay? Found both these on cdllife.com. And while we're talking about Connecticut, let's just go ahead and knock out this one from overdriveonline.com. You know how we've talked often about how California sets the standard often, and sometimes that's not a good standard, and they just want too much. And, the fear is that other states are going to follow. Well, guess what? Connecticut, they're on board with the new emissions stuff that California has put into place. This is part of what they call Public Act 22-25, a new law that, goes after greenhouse gases from the transportation industry. There's a tweet in here from the governor, Ned Lamont, who says the transportation sector is the number one polluter in Connecticut. We recently passed the Clean Air Act, which takes bold steps to decarbonize our transportation system, making it easier and cheaper for everyone to reduce their carbon footprint. And how they are doing this? Well, first, they are using, like I said, the California medium and heavy duty motor vehicle standards, meaning that's for new production vehicles, meaning that after a certain date, doesn't really say what that is, but California's, don't remember when that one is either, but at some certain date, California and Connecticut now cannot produce any more vehicles that are not electric. So we're going to see how that goes, as we will in California and now Connecticut. Also, they will be offering medium and heavy duty truck vouchers that will help truck manufacturers and, hopefully support them and promote the use of zero emissions vehicles. So, like I've been saying all along, California sets the standards, other states follow. Connecticut's the first. Who will be next? I guess we'll see. overdriveonline.com. All right, we got a little reminder and some tips from CDL Life. This is regarding the CVSA Brake Safety Week. We talked about that in an earlier podcast. This is running from August 21st through the 27th in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. They're going to be obviously focusing on brakes. And this little article goes over 10 brake hose and tube tips. These are pretty quick, so I'm just going to run through them real fast, and you can check out the link in the show notes if you don't remember all of them, which you probably won't. But most of these are common sense. But anyway, the first one is inspect brake hoses and tubing as part of your pre-trip and post-trip inspections, which you should be doing anyway. 2, report those issues on your driver vehicle inspection reports, which, well, I don't know how many people actually do that. I wish more people would do it that way. The next driver is not stuck with the last driver's lack of reporting this issue. Number 3, look for brake hoses that are making contact with steering, suspension, brake, or other components, or the tires or frame. Number 4, listen for air leaks, identify the location of the leak, and make the necessary repairs before leaving. Now, on this one, I would like to point out that if you are doing a pre-trip and post-trip inspection with your red brake knob pulled, you're doing it wrong, because you can't check for air leaks on the trailer if you're not supplying air to the trailer. Remarkable how many drivers don't do this. Number 5, brake hoses should not be kinked or improperly repaired. Number 6, airlines should not hang down or touch the tractor deck or frame. They should also not touch the ground. We're talking about mainly the trailer here, but I don't know if you know this or not, but those airlines hanging down from underneath your trailer are not allowed to be within 18 inches of the ground. So just be aware of that. If they are, get a bungee cord, put them up, get them fixed properly, whatever you need to do to comply. You don't want to go through a scale with those really close to the ground. Number 7, when you find air hoses or tubing making contact with other components, check for abrasion, wear, and protect, secure, or move the hose to prevent wear. Okay. Number 8, if a hose or tube is chafing and has caused a reduction in diameter, or on thermoplastic hoses, the secondary white color is visible, a violation exists. Yep, if you can see that interior lining on a hose, you're going to get nailed for sure. Number 9, if a hose is worn so that the reinforcement ply is cut or abraded, this is an out-of-service condition and should be replaced immediately. And number 10, make sure all repairs are consistent with manufacturer's requirements and guidelines. Now, my rule in general is just to let the professionals do their jobs. Let me drive the truck, let a mechanic fix the truck. That way I know it's done properly, and then, I have somebody to blame if I get nailed for anything, during this brake safety week. Again, that blitz from the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, or CVSA, is happening in August. That's 21st through 27th. Beware and be ready. Hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but were you aware that overdriveonline.com features a highway angel every now and then? Yeah, I never report on it, and I don't really know why. Maybe I just like all the downer news and not the good stuff, but I hope I'm not like that. Anyway, I'm going to report on this one, though, because I think it's relevant right now, and I'll explain here in a minute. This one is, let's see, there's a driver, J.W. Shorty Carrington from Columbia, Louisiana. He works for FTC Transportation, and he was named a Highway Angel by the Truckload Carriers Association. So this happened in Idaho on Highway 84, and Carrington was cruising along behind this other truck, and he noticed that the tire was belching some flames every now and then, and he realized that tire was on fire. Well, he pulled up beside the guy, honked the horn, alerted him, told him he was on fire. He pulled over, and before the guy could even get back there, Carrington was already back there with his fire extinguisher and put the fire out. How cool is that? Now, the relevance to this. Attention FMCSA. You can't pull up beside another driver and warn him that his tire is on fire if we're all going the same speed limit. Enough said. Actually, do you like these stories? Some of them are more impressive than others, I would say. This one's pretty cool, but if you would like to hear these Highway Angel stories, they're pretty quick, and I could tack them into the news. What do you think? Give me a shout, let me know. truckerdump@gmail.com. Again, these are all from overdriveonline.com. So kudos to both them and Truckload Carriers Association for shedding some light on the good things truckers do for this world. Lord knows there's plenty of sites out here that just point at all the bad crap that happens. All right, this one's pretty cool from overdriveonline.com. Apparently, Pilot Flying J is running their Pilot Road Warrior contest again. This contest will recognize and reward 3 truckers who go the extra mile in their jobs and their communities. The grand prize will be $15,000, $10,000 for second place, and $5,000 for third place. So, here's the way this works. If you know someone who is an exceptional trucker in many, many ways, you can nominate them. Just make sure you do it between August 1st and August 15th. And there is a link in the show notes here to this article, and the contest page where you submit these applications is in the link here, or in the article, I should say. So these submissions should highlight the driver's contributions to the trucking industries, if they've got safe driving history, community involvement, miles driven, anything else meaningful to the nominee. And again, you're going to want to get your submissions in by August 15th because they are going to do the drawing for these winners at the end of September as part of the National Truck Driver Appreciation Month. Wow, is that coming around again already? Cool. I probably won't get anything like I didn't last year. Yay. Oh well. They pay me well. I won't complain. So again, all the details for this, just check out the link in the show notes. That's overdriveonline.com. So here's a neat idea. Found this one on landline.media. Landline is, basically a sister company of OIDA. That's the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association. This one is called Riding Shotgun. Program aims to pair truckers and pets. Now, did you know that sometimes animal shelters won't allow truckers to adopt a pet? I didn't know that, but apparently that is actually a thing. I guess the idea of that is that a trucker can't provide a dog with enough exercise, probably the right nutrition, whatever. But, I see an awful lot of dang happy dogs driving past me, and they're looking over at me and got their tongue all hanging out, and they're just happy camper, over there in that passenger seat. So not only is the trucker more happy for having a companion, but so is the dog for being able to be with their owner 24 hours a day. I mean, what better could there be for a dog, right? And besides, like we talked about, a lot of Love's Travel Plazas are opening up new locations, and they have dog parks in there, so that's cool. That'd give them a chance to get out and get some exercise. And let's be honest, pretty much every trucker out there could use a little bit of exercise themselves. And that's one way to do it. Get a dog. They're going to want to go out quite a bit. So anyway, Memphis Animal Services in Memphis, Tennessee is a shelter, and they take in about 20 to 40 pets per day. Wow, that is a lot. And what they're wanting to do is match these animals with truckers. And In order to help with that, they want to give the trucker 50% off on adoptions. They say those adoption fees can range from $10 to $80 depending on the type and age of the animal. And you might even get a free pet bed out of it if you adopt through the program. So that's cool. They also accommodate truckers. Apparently right across from the shelter is some truck parking. You can park right over there, hopefully go over there, find you a good companion, and hit the road. Now, again, it is crazy to me that so many animal shelters don't think that a trucker can be a good pet owner. If you're listening right now and you've ever tried to adopt a pet and they said, we don't let truckers have pets, let me know. That seems a little weird, but they say this happens all the time here in the article. So who knew? So anyway, they're hoping with this program that they're doing here that that will open up the eyes of all kinds of other animal shelters around the country, and they will all jump on board here and start allowing truckers to adopt these pets who really, really, really need a home. I mean, seriously, if you are buying a $1,000 dog at a pet store, you need some really specific reason to be doing it, okay? Like, you just have to have that one particular breed who does that one particular thing, okay? Now, if you're saying you're allergic to the dander or whatever, well, there's plenty of animals in the shelter that have the type of hair or fur, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't shed so much. So no excuses there. Go to a shelter. Don't be frequenting these places and buying a $1,000 dog. What are you, nutbag? I mean, not unless you're into the whole AKC dog showing thing, I guess. But let's be honest. You're a trucker. You ain't showing no dog at no Westminster club, right? So anyway, here's how you're going to do this. You're going to email them at mas@memphistn.gov, and I will put a link in the show notes directly to that email, so it will open up right there in your phone, and you can email them. They say they will answer that 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. 7 days a week. So if you're interested in getting a pet for your truck, have at it. Check out this article on landline.media. What a fun story. I hope this works out and we can get all these pets good homes. As one dog once said to me, "Whoa, whoa," which translates to, "I like truckers. I hope one adopts me soon." So, unless something miraculous happens like a trucknado or something like that, well, I'm guessing that will be it for the news for this week. But, the show isn't over yet.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, who we got first? How about longtime friend of the show, Shannon Holden? You know how in the last episode I was talking about the barbecue that you can drive through in Texas? You can drive through a semi through it. And I was remembering a McDonald's that was in Minnesota, and I thought it was in Minnesota. I wasn't sure. And I asked and said, hey, if anybody's been through there, please let me know if you remember where it's at. Well, I got a really short email from Shannon. It just says, never been there, but my brother told me about it. I found it using this newfangled device called Google. You should try it sometime. Oh, and get off my lawn. Take care, he says. Well, despite the fact that Shannon is a gluteus maximus with a really high IQ, he does have a good point. I did a Google search and found it. It's the McDonald's in Chisholm, Minnesota. That is on Highway 169, and just as my memory served, it is way up north of Minneapolis, way up there. I think I've only been up in that area once in my life. But I was just happy to know that I hadn't lost my memory completely, and it was in Minnesota. And thanks for writing in so sweetly and helping me out there, Shannon. Appreciate it. Also in last week's episode, do you remember how I was struggling to say the name Batari Nkunzi? And I mentioned that I had reached out to Batari to figure out how to say his name, and then I figured out that his name was actually Emery. Right at the bottom of the email, it said it all along. Well, Emery did write in after hearing that episode, and he told me that Batari is the name of his company. But I will point out that Emery still hasn't told me how to say it. So at this point, I'm just going to assume that Emery is sitting back laughing his butt off right now as I tried to say Butari. Thanks for writing in, Emery. Hey, you remember from the last episode where we were talking about chameleon carriers, which are also known as reincarnated carriers? Yeah, these are bad companies that, have bad safety records and they get shut down out of service and, they basically lose their business. And all they do is just go start up another business using the same equipment, same procedures with a different name. And I had never heard this term before, so I reached out to you to ask you if you had any experiences with this. Well, I got a couple of responses over on the Trucker Dump Slack group. The first was from Maverick. He starts off by saying, I was off for a week. The first time, every time I've had back-to-back podcasts in my feed. Yeah. Well, miracles happen, Maverick. He says, we have the issue of chameleon carriers. The other issue I see here in Ontario is a fleet that has Ontario plates one day and then Nova Scotia or Alberta plates on their fleet a few days later. These are usually small carriers, but have seen some larger questionable fleets do it after their CVOR gets bad enough. CVOR, I guess that's like their CSA score for us. And some driver over there on the Trucker Dump Slack group, who calls himself some driver, writes, I see lots of chameleon carriers on the road when driving from Illinois to Delaware every week. I see same drivers in the same trucks, but have different business names taped to the door. Shady stuff. Yes, it is. And all I have to say about this is you two are far more aware of your surroundings than I am. I don't think I would notice this on a good day, let alone a bad day. So anyway, thank you, Maverick and some driver, for joining the Trucker Dump Slack group and for participating in there and for commenting on chameleon carriers. Appreciate it. And hey, I'm still taking comments. If you've had experience with this or know a company that does it, give me a shout, truckerdump@gmail.com. I will not call them out by name because I don't want to get, these companies need to be taken off the road, but I don't want to be the one responsible for doing that, but I would be interested and I will bleep out the name. Thanks again, Maverick and some driver. And lastly, I've been hinting at an email I got from driver Dave that involves sleep. So here it is. I finally got around to it. Dave writes, so it seems as though you're getting a bit burnt out between job and podcast editing, etc. Just wanted to let you know about an audiobook I listened to. I got it free out of my local library and use their own app, just Bluetooth to the radio. I just check and it comes up on Amazon, of course. Everything comes up on Amazon. Yes, it does. He continues, the name of the book is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, PhD. Of course, we all know how important sleep is to us drivers. Well, it appears it is important to all of us. This guy has done many years, I think it was 25, of study as a sleep scientist. He isn't a doctor, but then the top COVID doctor appears to have lied. Also, The first chapter of the book, even the intro, might actually scare you a bit. I think this guy is onto the truth about sleep. It won't change the trucking industry overnight, but knowledge is power and might help us add an hour or two if heeded to the rest of our lives. Just wanted to pass it along to you, Todd. Roger Beep. God bless, Driver Dave. So, as I pointed out, I had not read this book yet, and I could not find the audio version. I'm sure it was available on Amazon or, Audible, which the Evil Overlord has an account for that one, but I just, didn't want to bother with that. So I did find it on, actually a friend of mine loaned me his password for his library because my little town doesn't have one, and I used the Hoopla app. That's a really good app if you have a local library. You can get audiobooks on there for free or ebooks or all that kind of stuff. That is HOOPLA, by the way. And I could not find an audio version, but I did find a summarized version of this book that is only 29 pages. And hey, even I can read 29 pages pretty quick. Actually, I started it when I was heading back to our terminal one night, and I got out of the hotel room and went down to the lobby. And by the time the van had shown up to take us back to the terminal, I had finished the book. And actually, I had started on a different book another friend recommended, which I won't be commenting on because it's way more complicated than this sleep one. Now, Dave did tell me in a later email that this book is long and can get kind of dry, so I was happy to have it on a shortened version. So anyway, I am not going to explain the entire book to you. It just goes into detail of, how sleep works, how dreaming works. Very fascinating stuff, I got to say, on that, how dreaming works. I did not know any of that. Very interesting stuff. But also the ramifications of not getting enough sleep, how it can hurt our society, our health, our politics, our children, lots of things, sleep can affect. And you wouldn't really think about it, but the way Matthew Walker lays it out, it makes perfect sense. And one thing I did not know that might actually scare the pants off you like it did me is that if you do not get enough sleep, there is a direct link to Alzheimer's. So nobody wants that, right? So anyway, like Driver Dave said, sleep is very important to a trucker, but it is also important to everyone. So I would highly recommend this book. He said it was very meticulous, but this almost looks like a book that I would kind of enjoy reading the whole thing, because there was some excerpts in here talking about experiments they had done and stuff like that that I thought sounded very interesting. I'd probably, read the book, but if somebody paid me to do it, but I got too much to do as is right now. So basically, if I spent time reading this book, I'd get even less sleep, and we don't want that. But anyway, Driver Dave, I know you were concerned about me not getting enough sleep. I am getting shorted a little bit, but, it's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And the more I do this, the faster I seem to get at it. So it's taking less and less time. And believe me, you are not the only one on me about this, Driver Dave. The evil overlord is all up in my junk about this. She does not want me losing sleep over this podcast. She actually said, I'd rather you spend time on the weekend away from me doing the podcast if it's going to mean cutting into your sleep. So that's how important it is to her. But I am getting used to this new weekly schedule. I hope you are. And I'm just going to keep going with this. But anyway, this book again is called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Highly recommend it. And thanks for the recommendation, Driver Dave. So with that, we're down to inbox 0 again. Nothing in the queue for next week. So if you have got something you'd like to say to me or suggest for the podcast, anything like that, you just want to go off on a rant about something, send me an email or better yet, an audio comment to truckerdump@gmail.com. And I guess that will do it. But before we go, a big thanks to today's sponsor, Porter Freight Funding. You can learn more at porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump or give them a call at 205-397-0934. So with that, I guess we'll wrap this puppy up, spank it on the bottom, and send it on its way. Well, it's going to be really hard to top the cheesiness of last week's outro, so I guess I'll just be boring by telling you that everything I do, including contact info, social groups, ebooks, podcast show notes, and 164 past episodes perfectly archived for your perusal, can be found at abouttruckdriving.com. As always, I appreciate you listening and following the show. But I'd appreciate you even more if you tell all your fellow truckers about the show and go leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcast. The easiest way to leave a review is to follow the link in the show notes. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So with that, I'll just say, until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. You can just go to abouttruckdriving.com and get the ebook. Again, third week in a row. Or you can just go to About Truck Driving or you can just go to About Truck Driving. And kudos to both OverdriveOnline.com. .com. So it's kind of like the modern so it's kind of like the way the modern parking systems work for like, truck driver power or, what the heck's the name of that app that I've said so many times? Blah, 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 blah. Guess I'll look at my phone. So kudos to them and the Truckload Carriers Association for shedding some light on the good thing truckers do. Good Lord. I'm so tired of saying this. So it seems you're getting a bit burnt out between job and podcast editing. So it seems as though you're getting a bit burnt out between job podcasting? Yeesh. So it seems as though you're getting a bit burnt out between job and podcast editing. Good God, why can't I say that word? Hazmat, you actually had to have. Now, the PHMSA is a division of the U.S. Department of Transportation, so they don't just deal with trucks. They also deal with air. Oh, that's nice. Great. I guess I'll pause. It is entitled, Will Battery Electric Trucks End Up a Black Lives? What? Black Eye.